Hi, everyone. So, someone thought it was a good idea for all four of us to get together and do a podcast for World Dyslexia Awareness Day.
We definitely should. After all, we have been in this field for 21 years.
That's right. So, I'm Geetha. And as June mentioned, I've been at the DAS and working in this field for 21 years.
And I'm June. So like Geetha, I have been an inclusive educator for 21 years. How about you, Priscillia?
20 years, just 1 year short. How about you, Edmen?
Well, I've only been working with you guys for 15 years, so I'm the youngest here. So I need a lot of learning. I need to learn a lot from you ladies. But if you add all of the number of years we have together in this room, that is a total of 77 years. That is a lot of experience.
That's a nice number.
Yes, 77 years.
Yeah.
So which is why we came up with this topic, right? What I wish I'd known, 20 years of learning from students who learn differently.
Yes.
So let's start with the youngest of our group, Edmen. So can you recall a student who have completely changed how you think about teaching?
So I recall the very first teenage student I had. He was a 14-year-old boy when I first taught him. So he left a really lasting impact because when I first met him, he was very bright, he was very talkative, very eloquent. But the moment we shifted our activity to a reading activity, he really changed from somebody who's very lively and confident to somebody who looks very embarrassed and withdrawn. So this painful contrast showed me how deeply academic struggles can impact a child's sense of self. It has also taught me that teaching is not just about teaching skills, but also being aware of the emotional challenges of the children that we serve. This child that I taught, right now he's an adult. So many years later, this is actually a happy ending because he's thriving in his workplace. And this is really a testament to his resilience and growth. Right. So this experience really shaped me. It helped me realize that one of my earlier mistakes as a teacher was focusing a lot too much on skills and neglecting the emotional aspects of the students that we are serving. So really with this in mind, Geetha, I was wondering whether you can share one of your early mistakes that you have made that taught you any lessons.
One mistake, because there have been several. But this one was a true awakening. So while teaching literacy, paramount to me was being the champion of the students, making sure that they knew someone was looking out for them. And I had this adorable, very compliant class of 8-year-olds, right? And anything you ask them to do, they would do. They were not task avoidant. They were very cheerful. It was really a very fun class to teach. So one day, it's business as normal. I asked one of the students, can you tell me the spelling rule? So I was asking her to recall a specific spelling rule. And she just stared at me. So maybe a little over-enthusiastic in my response. I went like, you can do it. I was trying to be encouraging. But she ended up bursting into tears. She just burst into tears. It was totally unexpected. I was stunned. So later when she calmed down and I talked to her, she said she cried because she felt like she was letting me down because she couldn't remember it. I mean, that moment taught me something very vital. When it comes to misbehavior or disruptive behavior, our antennas are up. We're very quick to try and uncover what's bubbling beneath the surface. But when children are cheerful, compliant, we tend not to, or at least I didn't. And I assumed that everything would be fine. And, what I say may not have that kind of impact that it did have with her. So, I mean, Edmen, what you said, it's absolutely correct. The struggles are sometimes quite deep and we really have to dive deep to get to them. And we also know children yearn for someone who believes in them. And once you've created that connection with children, then, there's a greater responsibility because whatever you say can either raise them up or it can weigh them down. And so it was that moment, it was that mistake when like the words of Aristotle, really came to light to me. It just came alive to me. So Aristotle said, those who can do, those who understand, teach. So, I mean, when we truly understand our students, they feel safe because we remove all the risks. And when they feel a sense of belonging because they know that, we can see who they really are. So then teaching shifts from being a science to an art and then magic, right? Because you finally truly connected with your students. And I know June and I were batchmates and we in fact started out with classrooms right next to each other.
That's right.
And we have spent several moments, more than several moments, gasping over some of the mistakes we have
That's
made.
right,
So
yeah.
I mean, June, how about you? Like,
Right. So I still, think about a student I had in my early teaching years with some regret. So he was a child who wouldn't admit his mistakes. Every time I corrected his spelling, he would push back, insisting that he was right. So even if it means like erasing it right in front of me, he would do it. And then he said that's what I wrote.
so the teacher can't see it.
That's right. So he thought I wasn't looking, right? And then, he would just insist that he got it right the first time. But later it hit me. He wasn't being difficult. So he just didn't feel safe enough to be wrong. And for kids to feel safe, they actually need to know that they are accepted no matter how they perform. And that realization really changed me. So these days, whether as a teacher or as a parent, I live by a new set of rule for myself, which is really connection over correction. And that is a piece of advice that I would give to my younger self. How about you, Pris?
Right. Well, I mean, what I would say to my
Yeah.
younger self, I think I would tell my younger self that being uncertain and being overwhelmed is okay. Because just like, what three of you have shared about your students, I think every student have their own journey. And I think every teacher have their own journey as well. So I recall back then I often question myself, why am I struggling in my classroom? Wow, I think others seem to be okay. And then I also ask myself, it's like, why am I struggling with my lesson plans? I've been spending so much time creating resources. And then is it all worth it? And then will my activities actually make a difference to my students' learning? And then there will also be times whereby I'll be struggling with students with challenging behaviors or unmotivated students. And then I will also start to wonder if they actually dislike me. So being a young teacher with very little experience back then, I think I also felt the weight of the parents' expectations. There will be times whereby their questions or their doubts make me second guess about, how competent I am. Am I doing the right thing? Am I truly helping their children? But then fast forward 20 years, all right, I also recently met my ex-student. So my ex-student, he actually remembers his time at the DAS and he really misses it. He was telling me about the words that I said. He was telling me about the things that I did in class. He was telling me about how, my classroom used to look like. And those were little things that I have long forgotten. And so it made me realize that how ordinary these things are to us, they can be extraordinary to them. So they did actually leave a very lasting impression on him. So I think, there is a ripple of effect on our work with these students. And sometimes we just fail to see that when we were present at that time, So I think another thing that I would also tell my younger self is to trust your instinct and don't let your self-doubt, overshadow the little wins. So, the little things that you do matter more than what you think, So confidence will grow not only from knowing all the answers, but being present, being compassionate, I would say, and also, being able to learn alongside with your students. Yeah.
Chris, meeting that student 20 years later,
Yes.
I'm sure it was quite an experience. And the fact that he remembered all of those things that we would not have thought were important, that's quite an affirming experience.
Yes.
And based on the stories that we have shared on our early days, right? A couple of things are clear. One, all individuals, children and adults alike, there's a world of emotions that we go through. Feelings of insecurity, self-doubt, and even hope. right? And second is when a teacher honors the dignity of the student and truly makes an attempt to understand who they really are. And and go beyond the surface, really understand who they are and choose connection over correction. We're not just teaching anymore. We're in fact transforming lives because that experience with the student of yours as well as yours, Edmen, it's clear that their lives were changed for sure.
Yeah.
And that's really beautifully said, Geetha. I really liked how you say how we're really changing lives. The years of our experiences really shaped how we think and how we teach. So I think with that in mind, I'm just wondering, how has your supporting children with learning differences evolved over the past 2 decades?
Thank you for that question, Edmen. Allows me to redeem myself from my early mistakes, which I shared just now. So in my research, one clear finding is that we need to shift from a deficit-oriented mindset, where children are seen as problems that require fixing, to one that focuses on asset building. So over the years, I've encountered many students who have skills and strengths that will actually help them compensate and support them as they go through their learning journey. But beyond that, strengths are not just a means to an end. It's not just to help you overcome your learning challenges. They shine in their own ways. So the realization that we need to look at strengths, need to focus on assets, changed my practice for sure. I stopped asking, okay, what is wrong with you? What are the areas that you need help with? And instead, I started asking, what are you good at? Where is the gold in this particular child? And we all will find what we are looking for. We can play this game. I play this game with my kids all the time. I tell them, look out for a black cat. And suddenly they'll see black cats everywhere. And then I'll say, but did you see any tabby cats? Because they've not been paying attention to it. So what you're looking for is what you will find. So by viewing individuals as abled first, right? As having strengths first, my students actually genuinely amazed me with what they were able to do. And when we see students as more strengths-based than deficit-based, they too begin to value themselves. They can begin to see that they have ways to contribute to society. And in these conversations that I have with parents, when I highlight to them the strengths, right, I've actually felt like such gratitude coming from the parents because they are so overwhelmed with concern and anxiety and worry about how to help their child overcome their learning challenges. They've not really thought about, or at least no one has told them something that will help them feel positive about the future of their children. So that's another advantage, because once you have parents on board, that's an easier way to help the child. And finally, I think as a community, as a comment on this, on how it has changed my practice, as a community, I think we really do need to reflect on what we emphasize in education. Because if we focus only on weaknesses, then weaknesses become all they are. But when we highlight the strengths, we transform not just their learning, but their whole sense of self. They become strong people.
Absolutely. When we were first trained, it was drilled into us that our students with dyslexia have this and that weaknesses. And therefore, we should approach their learning in a very careful, deliberate and thoughtful way. And that is the traditional model of viewing disabilities. It is not wrong, but like you said, if we lean too much to this side, then their identity is tied only to their limitations. And that is really dangerous. So parents and educators, I think we need to find a balance. Earlier on, you mentioned about looking for this gold in the child.
Yes.
How do we really do that? Is it as simple as saying, since my child is not good at academics, let me look for non-academics that he is good at? Maybe art, soccer, dance, gymnastics.
Okay, so what you've mentioned, those are what I would define as observable talents, right?
Okay.
So let me explain a little.
Right.
So there is a distinction between gifts or multiple intelligences, for those who are familiar with that term, and talents. So gifts are innate. They are usually something you are born with. But for them to become a talent, you actually have to pay attention to them. So either the student has to be aware or someone has to alert them to, hey, you've got this particular gift. So attention has to be given to them and they have to be groomed. These gifts have to be groomed. And there must be a platform for them to showcase these talents so that they can continue to see the value in these strengths. So working on their gifts turns them into talents, which means it is very important that we pay attention to them. So if we don't, the outcome could be something like Singapore might lose potential entrepreneurs or social justice warriors or fashion designers because we have just neglected to focus on the gifts and turn them into talents. Coming back to, I think, what June you were talking about, I think some gifts and talents are easier to spot because they're observable, right? And they're tangible. And maybe also they are valued socially, culturally, economically. So for example, everyone knows that success can be achieved with athletics or maybe even with visual arts.
Right.
But there are certain other talents that may not come so naturally to someone's understanding that it could lead to success in terms of their future.
Right. So we are really saying that recognizing a child's strengths is more subtle than spotting talents or gifts.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right. And it takes keen observation on the part of the parent or the educator. So for a start, I think we can think about strengths in these domains: creativity, communication, literacy, intellect, physical, social. And a simple way to remember this is to use the acronyms CLIPS with a double C.
CC clips.
So
CC CLIPS.
Yeah,
yes.
CC clips.
That's right.
CLIPS, right? Yeah, so I think it's a useful guide for parents and teachers, in fact. So can you remind us, what behaviors that we should be looking out for?
Right. Okay. So I think children who are creative, they love to imagine and create, whether it's drawings, whether it's slime, which irritates me, or Lego. And I think children who are communicative, they express themselves very well, verbally and non-verbally. So they are the dramatic ones, like in relating a story, they will give you your 5 senses and all, right? And children with strong literacy skills, they usually express their strengths through reading and writing. Children with intellect and logic, they are curious about how things work, like cognitive challenges, math, solving puzzles. And finally, children with good physical skills, I think they are usually very agile and they have movement-related strengths. So you might ask, what can we do with these strengths?
Yep.
Right? So looking back at my students, I remember a child with very good physical skills, right? And the child needed to learn the times table. So, but times table memorization is a dread for our kids with ADHD and dyslexia.
Yes, of course.
So how do I use the strength to teach the child times table? So I got the child to actually throw a ball to me to and fro. And each time the child throws it, the child will go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah. So it's a very natural way. And I think research actually shows that this is a dual task training, which improves our executive function.
Both pathways, right?
Yes.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah. And then there is another example as well. I had another student who was a very creative little girl, but phonics was really hard for her. So to get her to spell, I got her to spot small words in big words. And with that, spelling became possible for her. So this way of learning to spell actually appealed to her creative strength. Yeah, so I think when we use strengths to help them learn, learning becomes so much more pleasant. And this first sweet taste of success is so important in giving them that dose of confidence to do more. Yeah.
Absolutely. Actually, the story that you shared about the little girl and her creativity reminds me of my daughter because that's how she learns spelling.
Okay.
She'll sing out the letters with a tune that's based on a song that she likes at that moment.
Okay.
And that is the way, and she will be writing it as she's singing. So absolutely, there are ways for us to leverage on their strengths.
Yes.
And these strengths, of course, hint at something else that they might be able to achieve in the future.
Yeah.
So clearly what we are saying is what works for a child depends on the child. And of course, the teacher's ability to identify these strengths that will work. So we need to be flexible and nimble when working with children. But see, now here's where we have to take a pause. Surely with teaching, there must be some non-negotiables, some things that you cannot avoid, right? So Edmen, what are your non-negotiables when supporting diverse learners?
So for me, the non-negotiable in teaching is what surrounds teaching. So this is really the social support circle that a child has with regards to their developmental years. So in fact, a lot of the examples that June and Geetha you have mentioned earlier did involve a social circle, did involve you as educators or parents supporting that child, right? So this social support goes beyond academics. It goes beyond really the skills that you are teaching the child. It is really about making the students feel very valued, helping the students' self-esteem grow. And it really helps them with resilience and helping them with that perspective of continuing to learn and wanting to learn more. So I've seen this in two examples. I'll share two examples. The first is really in my research. I spoke with readers who really enjoyed books and enjoyed reading despite struggling to read. Right? So they enjoyed reading despite struggling to read. So their success didn't come from having fewer challenges. So in fact, they really mentioned how they struggled since their growing up years. But it came from how they were able to work around their challenges. And this is done through resilience. And how this resilience came about was because every single one of them had one significant adult who supported them along the way. So this is that social circle that I was talking about. Right? So that made them feel cared for, and that made them understand that it is possible for them to read. My second example is a little more personal. A few years ago, I fostered a child with dyslexia. So at first, I thought it was the perfect match because I had so much experience, I had years of experience working with students with dyslexia. But very quickly, I realized that I was wearing the wrong hat, right? So I was wearing the hat of an educator, but what I needed to do was wear the hat of a parent. And what she needed wasn't another reading rule or another reading strategy. What she really needed was a parent's presence, love, and assurance. So true enough, once she felt safe and loved, so I didn't need to do all these spelling rules. Learning became a lot more natural and easier when she had that feeling of love.
Yeah, so I do agree. I do agree with you, Edmen. I think one of my non-negotiables is also creating a support circle. Yeah, so I think it is most important that children feel that genuine sense of belonging. So I think that every child who walks into our classroom should feel that this is a safe space where they are accepted for who they are. And I also want them to know that I've got their backs. So. But I mean, getting their backs. I mean, that I've got their backs is not about lowering their expectations, and it's also not about being that pillow for them to fall back on. I think it's more about being that what President Taman mentioned about the springboard, being that springboard for them to bounce back. When they have a fall. So it's about supporting them. It's about standing with them through challenging times. Cheering them on, advocating for them, and also celebrating their efforts. So when students know that they belong and they know that there is someone who truly believes in themselves, they will be more willing to take risks, learn new things, persevere, and also to discover what they're capable of. Yeah.
I mean, it's so nuanced, isn't it? Trying to understand this, but a springboard, I like that. And you made a very important point, I think, that it's not about lowering expectations, but instead about being the more knowledgeable other that raises the child, but is there in the event that the child needs additional help and elevates them with kindness. So as much as we want to be that springboard, we also acknowledge that there are constraints when it comes to teaching in a classroom, right? So these constraints are genuine, but then there are some challenges which are not quite real, but they're actually based on myths and misconceptions. So Pris, what myths about learning differences do you still encounter when you talk to teachers who are teaching in classrooms?
Well, I think June and I, both of us have been doing a lot of teacher training in schools. We often get a lot of questions from parents, not parents, but teachers that, so in my class, if I have one student with dyslexia, so I will teach him in this way. And then if I have another student with ADHD, I will teach her in that way. So, and teachers often think that there's one specific way or there's a certain specific way of, supporting children with a diagnosis. And then they will also ended up worrying that, if I were to cater to this particular student, what's going to happen to the rest of my students in the class? So if I'm going to pay more attention on him or her at the expense of the other students in my class, then is it being fair? But the thing is that there's actually no real need to differentiate instructions in the classroom. So for example, you have a student who has a diagnosis of dyslexia and ADHD, and this student is not able to and then you're going to do like this reading activity, and then this student is not actually able to sit through this whole reading activity for more than 10 minutes. So what will you do to engage this student? Perhaps you will plan a pre-reading activity to capture his attention, to activate his prior knowledge, in hope that you can keep him engaged throughout this whole reading activity. So when you think about creating such an activity, will this activity actually benefit the rest of the students in the class? So if it's yes, then why not just do the activity as a class?
Right.
And then at the same time, this pre-reading activity may also benefit the other students who may not have a diagnosis, but they happen to be slow readers, right? So I think teachers need to have these questions in mind. When I plan this activity for this particular student, does it benefit the other students? If it's yes, then just plan for the whole class, right? Yeah, so this is what we call the application of universal design learning principles in the classroom. So it's just making the classroom an environment whereby learning is made much more accessible for all. Yeah.
Can I share something that I learned from a school?
Sure.
Okay, so there's this school. They actually print A3 copies of the Chinese spelling list for the students. So it came about because they were printing it for just a few dyslexic students in the level, right? But they realized that the other students can also benefit from an enlarged font.
Yep.
You know how complicated Chinese characters are, right? Yeah, so that practice became commonplace throughout the level. So it's not just for these dyslexic students that I cater this for, but that this practice benefits the rest. So therefore, I do it for the rest of the students and everyone benefits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is another example of the application of universal design, isn't it?
Yes.
That's right.
Well, I have another one, and it might sound a bit controversial, but I call it the myth of disability. So by looking at a child as just dyslexic and nothing more, parents and students have sometimes told me, they sometimes said to me that they are excluded from certain activities because it was felt that their time might be better spent on trying to overcome their challenges, or maybe they just can't do it. It's going to be difficult for them. So it's a true story here that I'm going to be sharing. So this child is quite dramatic and enjoys drama and musicals, and she's quite expressive. But there was this competition in school where they were choosing a narrator, and she wasn't invited to participate, right? So she was disappointed. So when I asked the school about it, they said, she's got dyslexia. She's already going to be struggling to read, So, I don't think this is time well spent also because she might have other things to focus on. So I do want to stress that the teacher was coming from a place of concern. Right? They didn't want the child to feel pressure, neither did they want the child to experience failure. But I think all of us will agree that failure sometimes is good as long as you know that there's someone standing behind you.
Yep, true.
Failure actually propels you forward,
That's right.
right? So I do want to say that the teacher was just concerned. But we did try to persuade the teacher, and the teacher eventually said, yeah, sure, let's give it a shot. And she was allowed to audition. She practiced hard. I can attest to that. And another happy ending here, she was selected as the narrator.
Oh, wow,
Ooh,
amazing.
great.
Yeah.
So I think one of the misconceptions here is the label itself. And so I call it the myth of disability. So we must look past the labels because as much as the labels provide us with the resources and an ability to understand the learner and maybe what kind of support will benefit the learner, individuals with dyslexia or any other learning difference, there's so much more than these definitions can be. And as a result of these definitions, they should not be denied an opportunity to explore other things that give them joy and things that bring interest into their everyday lives, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
So I must say that one of the things is this girl was very determined. So she would practice every day. And we, of course, encouraged her. We always praised her when we noticed that there were improvements in her expression. And we even recorded every practice session so she could herself see the progress she was making. So how she's improved from, say, the first one to the third one, etc. So she was making good progress. And of course, like I mentioned, she was selected as a narrator. But what about a child who's struggling and doesn't show much progress? So, I mean, Edmen, how would you encourage such a child?
I often remind my students and sometimes myself as well that life is much bigger than just academics and there are multiple pathways to success. In fact, the story that you shared earlier about this girl, there is a conversation between the teacher and the parent and the girl. And this is a discussion whereby they are trying to decide which is the best path for the child, whether the child should focus a little bit more time on the academics or whether she should explore an opportunity to excel on the stage, right? So I bring the conversation back to the successful readers I spoke about earlier on my research. So that is the group of readers that showed a lot of perseverance. And what this group of readers did was what I think the teacher of your example was suggesting, right? So they focused on the weaknesses of the child and they were really encouraging, supporting these children who struggle with reading. And because of this support system, the group of readers I investigated actually excelled in reading and became very resilient readers. Right. So this is one perspective of an example of the story. And then I also bring you back to the boy I spoke of earlier, right? The first teenage boy I taught when I was first a teacher. So this was an example of a child that grew up struggling with reading throughout his years. So even when he went into post-secondary school, he continued to struggle with reading. But what happened was he eventually found a job that required very little reading and writing and a lot of hands-on work. And he really excelled at it and he's doing very well right now. So what is common in these two stories is that for both cases, whether or not you are working on your weaknesses or whether you found a strength, is that they found a very strong sense of purpose. Right? So both stories show how important it is for students to find opportunities to build this sense of competence, this sense of I know I can do it, whether it's something that's very difficult to them or whether something that comes naturally to them. So both journeys are equally valid. They are both successful. And really, I think what is important to all of us is that we need to celebrate the diverse successes of our students. We need to continue to encourage them, even though sometimes in the perspective of academics, the progress might feel a little slow.
Yeah, agree. So I think from what we have shared so far, I can gather 3 key points that very much aligns with the self-determination theory. I guess you have heard that the 3 key things will be, the firstly is the sense of competence. I think having that first taste of success, whether or not it's academic or it's non-academic, I think it's very important to build children's confidence and that sense of competence. And then secondly is autonomy. Giving children that choice and being able to, discover what they are good at and how they can leverage on their strengths actually empowers them to take ownership and take charge of their own journey.
That's
right? And lastly is that connectedness, feeling connected to teachers, to their peers, to the environment, whether or not it's with the school or with even at the DAS, I think children need that sense of belonging to thrive, right? While we say that, it takes a village to raise a child, but, building that village requires good partnerships with parents, with teachers, with schools, right?
Oh, sure.
So, however, it may not be that easy. because of the differing perspectives and opinions of, from various people. So Geetha, I see your smile. So I'm curious. So based on your experiences, how do you handle differences in opinions between parents, teachers, and even specialists like us?
Yeah, so, I'm also smiling because I'm thinking of this British comedian. So this British comedian was once asked, and he has this as a part of his routine, a question and answer with the audience. So he was once asked, what is your advice on parenting? So, he's a comedian. So his first response was birth control.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Right?
Okay.
But okay, so when pressed for a more serious response, right? He said this. He said, hard decisions now, easy life later. And
What does
I
it
think
mean?
I think that's a reminder to ourselves when it comes to mediating. Some things may seem hard now, right? But if we persevere, eventually it will ease into an easy life. So let me elaborate a little bit more. Okay. So whenever there are differing opinions, I think it does become a challenge. Of course, ideally, we want everyone to agree, right? Parents, teachers, students, everyone says yes to whatever you're proposing. But that doesn't often happen, right? Teachers that I've spoken to in my research and outside of my research have shared the challenges they face when they try to encourage parents to accept that their children may need additional help. Because sometimes parents are in denial or it's really their anxiety, right? Preventing them from accepting that this might be a possibility. But the same can be said for parents who have told me that, they've tried to get some support and help from teachers or schools and they're not able to get them easily. So in my experience, when it comes to managing these sort of differing opinions, I think it's two key things. One is always to be respectful in our communication, always respectful communication, and to give feedback in a constructive manner. Okay, so it's respectful communication and constructive feedback. I would go as far as saying, take the teacher out for a cup of coffee or tea, whichever preferred beverage is, right? Or, if you're a teacher, show the parent how hard the student is trying. Try to, the same thing we've said about children, forming connections requires a degree of understanding and an effort to try and understand. So whatever is holding the teacher or the parent back in agreeing with you, it would be for you to investigate, try to understand and build that relationship with them because it takes, I think, Pris, you said it takes an ecosystem of support to help a child, right? So if it can be a bit frustrating and tedious at the start. During when you ask why, right? Hard decisions now, easy life later, because it can be tedious, it can be difficult, it can feel like it's never ending.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think this sort of respectful communication and constructive feedback and really making an effort to understand the other party's perspective will lead to an easy life later where there is some sort of agreement on how we should move ahead in supporting that child.
That's right. Yeah, I think earlier on you actually mentioned about parents who are very protective about their children, who may not see what the teacher sees. But on the other side, there are also, I think, parents who are very upset with the children. And I've encountered parents like that. So for me as an educator, I like to think of myself as a peacemaker between the child and the parent. So, our children with learning and behavioral challenges, they are often caught in a tough cycle. They are chastised in school, right, for their bad behavior. And if the teacher simply passes that message home to the parents, they are likely to be scolded again at home.
Yep.
And that's not something that I want to do as an educator, passing negativity from the classroom into the home. So instead, I try to be the one who passes on positivity. So I make it a point to always highlight students' strengths to parents, especially the ones that parents may not always be able to see. So let me share a personal story. I usually don't remember much of what is said in parent-teacher conferences.
Oh,
But-
no.
But there is one teacher who told me something I have not forgotten till this day. So that teacher told me how my son gave up his recess to put up Chinese New Year decorations on the class notice board. So he's in an all-boys school, and in an all-boys school, that's not a cool thing to do, right? But he did it anyway because no one stayed back to help the teacher. So when she related that incident to me, it brought tears to my eyes because as a boy with ADHD and dyslexia, he doesn't often hear affirming words in school. And so that one moment of recognition meant so much to me. Yeah. So that's the kind of impact that teachers can have, bringing hope and light to parents. And that's really what I strive to do as an educator. Of course, I think there are times when educators do need to raise concerns about behavior, right? But even then, I think it makes a big difference if we can also offer suggestions. So this way, the conversation shifts from being a complaint session to a constructive and collaborative one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I do agree with you. I think in terms of giving feedback, it shouldn't just be about what they can or should be doing, but rather what you've been doing that has worked, and is there something we can do together then to help this child?
That's
you
right.
know?
Yeah.
Yes.
So the two things I like about what you said, one is you being the peacemaker, and one you spreading positivity. I think that is really important.
Right.
And this is actually a very powerful thing that the community can do. How the child develops involves so many different individuals. So parent, teacher, and other stakeholders. And because you are both educator and parent, you're able to see both sides of the story and
That's
how you're able to be that peacemaker.
Right.
So in my perspective, I feel that one of the strongest things that a community can do is really offer a very consistent cycle of support. So this is really the collaboration between the teacher, the students, the parents, as well as the different stakeholders, right? But I think the reality is that not every child will meet perfect adults. I think we have encountered all of that. And I think if I were to be very honest, I have moments whereby I fall short as well, so I'm not that perfect adult.
Oh, we
as well.
all have those.
Yes.
Right. So we do
are
need
humans.
to, we do need to admit that. And I think what really matters is that you need to be there to show up with compassion to the child, to create that safety net that Priscilla you have mentioned earlier. And this really helps to nurture the resilience in the children.
That's right.
Right. So again, I bring back my research, the successful readers, right? So they were very successful in reading despite their challenges and despite their struggles. And what I found in that research was the reason why they were successful was because when they had parents who really supported them along the way. And there were some without parents present because the parents are very busy working. They had the teachers that were on board. And for those that did not have parents or teachers, there was somebody else. So there was at least one significant individual. Right. So what I am really hoping that all of us and the audience who is listening to this podcast would hear is that can you be that person to step up for that child and to do something for that child? So instead of waiting for somebody else to do it. Right. So with all of this in mind and knowing that our teachers out there have very good intentions, but sometimes they face a lot of limitations. So I'm just wondering who in an educational setting can best help teachers achieve their aims for their students.
Right. I think Priscillia and I have been to many schools, and we noticed that when teachers and SEN officers are well supported, the children will be well supported. So we often hear educators say the kids today are so different. Really, I think teachers today are working with a generation shaped by a very different world, very different from what we grew up in. So unlike us, these children are born into an age of instant access, where answers are a click away, where waiting feels unnecessary and remembering isn't required at all, right? But managing these executive function challenges can be deeply demanding for our educators, not to mention the additional learning needs.
Sure. Yeah.
And so to help educators cope, we really need to equip them, give them a real toolbox of strategies. And when teachers feel supported, the children will thrive. Because in the end, supporting teachers is supporting students.
Yep.
Yeah, I do echo what you say, June. Supporting teachers is supporting students. Supporting teachers is not just limited to, equipping them with that toolbox of strategies. It also means, caring for their overall well-being as well. So, although I have not taught in a class of 40, right? I mean, in DAS, we teach about 4 to 5 students in a class, right? So supporting a class of 4 or 5 with highly varied abilities is already challenging enough. So, even though, we started off being trained with all the knowledge and skills, we should be well equipped in managing these students. There's always moments of self-doubt, right? And also that pressure from due to parents, anxiety, as well as the expectations. So there'll be times whereby, you do feel very overwhelmed. And I believe, teachers in schools, right? They also feel that, that overwhelming feeling as well. So just like what, Edmen previously mentioned, having that significant figure, right? Being there for them and understand them. I think teachers need that as well, right? Having that understanding leader makes a lot of difference, right? It is like, someone who's not only believing in them and also, being able to support them in terms of like creating an environment whereby learning is made truly accessible for all students with varied abilities.
Yes, exactly. Well, we've really explored so many perspectives, and I really enjoyed this chat and session today. And there's so much more we could share if we have the time, right? But I think we do need to bring this conversation to a close. And I think as a closure, what I would like to do is really ask all of us this question to answer. So the question is really, what does success truly mean to our children?
To me, success is when a child is able to identify and tell you what they're good at. So for instance, it could be how sensitive they are. They recognize that they are sensitive and they can sense when their friend or even their parent needs a hug or help, right? So a child's ability to be able to tell that, okay, I have these strengths is, I think, the first step towards success. And when you look at successful dyslexics, a common factor that we can see is their awareness of what they're good at and how they zoom in on it, right? So they know they're good at it and they go straight into it. And when a child can then say this about themselves and say it with belief and conviction, then, that to me is success, because that child then knows how and why they are a valuable member of society, and they can then dare to dream. They can go for it.
Right. Okay. Now, for me, I think success is simply this: when a child has the courage to try again. Our human brains, we are wired to crave comfort, right? So failure is not comfortable. But so if the child can actually go against that and try again, I think to me that is really bravery and courage, and that is success in itself. Just that courage to try again. Yeah, and but for them to actually do that, we also have to be their lifelong cheerleaders, the parents, the educators, those faithful ones waving the pom-poms, even when the cartwheel is completely off, you just continue cheering. Yeah, I think that's what we have to do as well.
Yeah. What you just said reminded me of this quote. Fail, try again, fail better.
Ah, nice.
A quick improvement.
Yes.
Right.
To me, success is not defined by academic performance, but by resilience. So resilience is something that you have mentioned. So failing and then doing it over and over again. Right. So this is really the ability to learn independently at your own pace. So when children believe in themselves and they keep going on despite their challenges, they carry with them the tools to navigate life with strength and adaptability. So very similar to what you have mentioned, June, is the ability to be resilient enough to go again and again.
Yeah. Well, I often remind my students, not to measure their success by comparing with other students. Yeah,
That's very
because
important.
yeah, it is very important. Because everyone have their own strengths and capabilities, right? So you may excel in one area, but you struggle in the other, while someone else may be doing so much better in that very thing that you're struggling with, right? But that doesn't make you any less capable, because everyone is just different. That uniqueness makes you different. So instead, I would encourage students to compare themselves. That they compare themselves with who they were before. So you look back at what you once found challenging, and then notice what you can do today that you couldn't do before. So I think that growth, no matter how small, is called success.
Yeah, that's so wonderfully said. So today, it is World Dyslexia Awareness Day, and I really want to wish all of us and the students out there many years of success.
Yes.
Yay!
Yes to that.
Cheers! Yeah, cheers to that.